Light 'em up. On the count of 3, go on 2. 1, 2. Before we go any further, if you'd be so kind, please hit that like button, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you can be notified of any new content that comes up. Today is November the 19th, we're on day 2 of the release of Ghostbusters Afterlife. I've seen it 4 times now. Went with my son yesterday morning, and then followed up with another showing in the afternoon. Went again this morning, and then went with my best friend, Mr. Mark, this afternoon also. I posted my first non-spoiler review yesterday. Looking back at it, I don't think I made any sense. I think I was just lost for words, overwhelmed by the whole experience. I missed out so much. Even though it was non-spoiler and there was not so much I can talk about, I didn't even mention Paul Rudd. Didn't mention anything about the guys returning. I know it's been in one of the trailers and a lot of people expect it, but I think I still considered that a spoiler, so didn't include it. This review now is going to be, with me, slightly more semblance of mind, but it is going to be completely spoiler heavy. So we're going to go through moments of the film, go through plot points, go through scenes. So if you haven't watched it yet, and if not, why not, and you don't want anything to be spoiled, do not watch this video, do not watch any further. Okay, we'll do a quick countdown and then we're going to hit into it. Firstly, I'm going to reiterate just what a beautiful, beautiful film this was. Some of these shots from this movie were just stunning to look at. Those sunsets, those golden skies. There was a scene just after they'd caught Muncher and they'd gone over the bridge and the Ecto-1 had skidded to a halt, and they got out and all the sand and dust was in the air and you just saw Finn's silhouette as he came out, the sun poking through and the lens flares, and it just looked incredible. Then before that, just the wide shot of the Ecto going down that roadway with Muncher flying in the air, held by the beam. Cinematography by Eric Steelberg was just beautiful. Every single shot just felt spoiled looking at it. Like I said, I've seen the film 4 times now, and I'll be lying if after the second time I was thinking, oh, do I go back in the morning again? Can I watch it a third time in such a short space of time? But as soon as the film started again, on that third viewing this morning, it was just as good. Just as good, and I didn't have a moment where I was just like feeling tired or whatever. I was just completely thrilled and just so caught up with every moment of the film. Obviously, the more you watch it, the more you see and the more you pick up on, the more you notice. After the first time I saw it, like I said, I think I was just an incoherent mess. And then when I watched it the second time later on that afternoon, it almost felt like I'd missed half the movie on the first time round. I really hadn't, but I think I was just taking so much in that my focus may have been all over the place. It meant so much that emotion and everything else just completely took over. On the second viewing, I knew what was coming and I got to enjoy every moment and got to wait for this bit to happen and kind of take in the performances that bit more. And this morning when I watched it the third time, I think it was the one that got to me emotionally the most. And there were 2 or 3 occasions where tears were pouring down. I knew the moments were coming, maybe the expectation played into that, but just, completely got to me. And then the 4th time, this afternoon, I took my best friend, who isn't really that big a Ghostbusters fan. In fact, he revealed to me a couple of days ago that he hadn't seen the first one since it was released when he watched it as a kid, and hadn't even seen the second one. So it was interesting to go with him and get his perspective on it as a kind of non-fan, but it was that much enjoyable kind of watching it with someone new, and he really enjoyed it and saw it for what a wonderful piece of movie making it really is. And I have to confess, I didn't think this would happen, but I'm enjoying it more and more every time that I'm seeing it. As soon as that film begins and those music kicks in and we see Egon at the farm, and again just that marriage of these beautiful moving images and a fantastic score by Rob Simonson, that it brings it all back, and you do feel, what's it Captain Kirk said? I feel young. It made me feel young, and to invoke such a reaction from me, or such feelings and emotion, is just astounding work by everyone involved. Performance-wise, the movie rests on McKenna Grace's shoulders, and she's absolutely incredible in this film. Just what an actor. Just for someone that young to be able to emote so well, and just tiny little nuances in her performance. And when Podcast finds her joke funny when they're outside and she's kind of walking and she's kind of got this little smile on her face, and it's fantastic. And then it's just, she embodies that character so much and you forget you're watching. you forget you're watching an actor. And I know she's been in a lot and has already had massive plaudits for Handmaid's Tale, but she's just absolutely incredible in this film. Absolutely incredible. Genuinely believe that's Egon Spengler's granddaughter. And there's the scene with her and Carrie Coon just after they've come from the police station, and they get home and they have that argument, and you see the tears in McKenna Grace's eyes. She tells her mum she knows who her granddad was, and he wasn't nuts, only to be met by her mum saying then he must be an asshole. It's patronising to say for someone that young, and I don't mean to be condescending in any way whatsoever, but to hold her own against a heavyweight actor like Carrie Coon in the scene, it's just fantastic. And jump into the end of the movie where she's there with the proton pack facing off against Gozer, and there's that money shot where she's just there. Gozer's thrown our guys over to the car, and then she's just there and she shoots Gozer, gives her that darting shot, which I just acted out for some reason. And just the intensity on her face, just incredible, incredible. The film was mainly about McKenna Grace's Phoebe, and then also Carrie Coon's Callie, tongue twister, and her relationship with her absent father that she'd never had, and how that unfolds from that coldness of just going to the house to sell the silver and collect the check, to find in the basement and having that contact with the lamp, and finding the photos and that photo wall, and knowing that he had been watching all that time. Again, just who would have thought you'd get resonance like that in a Ghostbusters movie? And then on the flip side, in the third act of the film, we get that scene where mother and daughter bond in the back of that speeding Ecto-1 being chased by the terror dog, where Callie has been rescued, and then she suddenly sees her daughter take charge, and Phoebe's there and pulls the handle, and the gunner seat comes out and she zaps the terror dog and goes back in again. And just the look from her mum, just kind of like, who is this girl? And kind of, who is she? I now know who she is. She's a scientist. And you get that sense of awe and proudness. I thought Finn Wolfhard was great as Trevor. Had that weird sort of gawky innocence. And there were some real nice comic beats. After he first met Lucky, for example, in the diner, and the guys in that back kitchen made fun of him and were like, yeah, you've done really well there. She's really going to go out with you now. And then Trevor just gives this weird sort of look and stares off into middle space with his mouth sort of dropped open a little bit, like he's a bit lost. And then those scenes with Phoebe when they're looking at the map gives little hallbacks to when they're looking at the map in the prison in the original Ghostbusters, and Venkman's given his never studied. Trevor doesn't identify the concentric circles, and then Phoebe kind of pulls him up on it, but then he kind of gets back with, well, yeah, that's obvious. And Trevor had less to do than Phoebe, really. There was less of an emotional journey for him, but he was still an integral part of the film, of the ensemble, and just some of his reactions, and really, again, just the relationship with his mum and his sister just made him a rounded character still. Logan Kimmer's podcast, what can you say that hasn't really been said already? I think it was a really difficult character to pull off. I think there's a real fine line where he could have been really annoying, but Kim's performance was spot on, and kind of the faces he was pulling as he was delivering some of those lines. I think the timing was pretty much perfect every time. It's kind of strange seeing him that young after seeing all the interviews that have been online just lately. 2 years later, where his voice is deeper now and he's kind of got an air of confidence about him. But it was a great comic performance by a relatively unknown actor. Celeste O'Connor as Lucky didn't really have too much to do, really. She absolutely filled that role. Again, as part of that foursome, she just completely clicked with the rest of the cast, and you believed that they were all friends and were all in this together, and by the end of the film, all Ghostbusters. It's really hot under this light, so I'm just going to take a quick break, so I'll leave you with something. I'll be back in a moment. Gary Gruberson. You're going on a date with Gary Gruberson. Paul Rudd was awesome, as always. Again, I keep saying about the sense of wonder or whatever, but his character was so passionate and excited about everything. And as that summer school teacher with all these dumb kids, he was brilliant. I think most of us all had those supply teachers that just didn't really care, had to cover the lesson. And then that scene where he first meets Phoebe in the little office in the classroom, when they're talking about the seismic waves, and his face when she's hitting him with all that knowledge, and just how impressed he is, and how excited he is to share his theories, and he's talking to this 12-year-old on the same level. The scene in the Walmart after his date with Callie, the scene that's been online for a while, when he's at the ice cream fridge, Jamocha, before we meet the mini puffs. There's like a 10-second bit before that where he's just walking through Walmart and he's proper strutting and just kind of happy and bouncing, and it's just like, it's such a funny thing to look at even before he's delivering any sort of comedic line or joke. Just the whole performance is superb. You do have to wonder whether there are any more scenes with him as the Keymaster. Obviously we saw the Pterodon go after him and we knew what was coming next. And then the next time we see him, his shirt's all torn and he's moving the proton gun and destroying those sentry guns that are going down into the pit. And then the next time we see him, he's laying on a cliff top with a flower in his hair just before he gets to consummate his relationship with the gatekeeper. That was a pretty scary scene, actually. Especially for children, I think, when the kids came home and Callie was possessed. And we get that.
There is no mum, only Zool.
What a lovely singing voice you must have. And then she turns around with the red eyes and the snarls. If you were a kid, I'm guessing that's pretty scary stuff, I think. So what about the Ghostbusting? Well, after that scene with Phoebe on podcast, testing the proton pack, an amazing sound design on that, by the way. There was just that lull of silence before she powered it on, and the whole screen shook, and the floor, I could feel it rumbling under my feet. We hear those groans from the factory, and they go and investigate, and we meet Muncher, and just, what a scene. Just that proton pack switching on, and seeing it blast, and seeing it cut through stuff, and then wrap around Muncher. And it was just beautiful to see, beautiful to watch. It takes you back again. Like I said, it made me feel young. Well, not so much young, just it gave me that joy and excitement that I would have had as a child watching something on the cinema screen like that. And then we follow up, obviously, with the main centrepiece of the film, really, the one that's been in all the trailers, where they hop into the Ecto-1 and chase it down the main street. And just what a fantastically filmed scene. And in that factory, again, the sound design, the doors slamming, the big echoes, the booms. And then we see all the bite marks in the walls and the ectoplasm dripping through. And the bite marks have got this blue glow around them. And then we finally lead up to that point where they peek round the corner and see Muncher high above, munching away. That whole car chase and the Ecto-1 rocketing round those corners. And the proton stream flying everywhere, destroying everything in its path. Muncher flying through the shops and the restaurant between Callie and Gary. It was such a rush. It was so good and so well executed. And then, like I said, it goes out into the open road and we get that stunning shot of the car racing down the long road leading to the mountain and the stream dancing across. It was just fantastic. Before we talk about the final act and the return. When they first announced Ghostbusters Afterlife, and then I found out it wasn't going to be in New York, I really wondered how it was going to work. And I think in the end it was absolutely the best choice. I know a lot of people have been talking about how the film itself is a throwback to those sort of 80s films, and it really is. And in my opinion, in a very, very positive way. A lot of people complaining that it's too many callbacks or it's too much fan service. That's all rubbish. This really had the look and the feel of a Ghostbusters movie. It was in this town, this small town, that felt like it was actually set in the 60s. It was quite an analogue setting. The 60s diner, the soundtrack predominantly sort of 60s soul music, the record player with the jukebox flipping the vinyl, almost in an episode of Happy Days in that diner. And then we go to the school where Gary Gruberson, wheels out the TV and the film's on VHS. And again, it just really gives you that sort of 80s aesthetic that just works so well for the film. And then we get to the Shandor mines and all hell starts to break loose. Ivo Shandor is awake and walking, and he's J.K. Simmons. I heard a rumour years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, that J.K. Simmons might turn up as Ivo Shandor, but I think that was fan casting because of the Juno connection. But then to suddenly see him turn around and start talking and go, hang on. But just before that moment, we get Gozer come out the pit, and then you're like, hey, that's Olivia Wilde. And that I didn't know was going to happen. That was a kept secret. Though research I did yesterday afterwards, there was an article online from 4 weeks ago. So I don't think anything ever gets kept secret, but I just didn't know anything about that at all. And that was kind of strange to see. And that was the only kind of thing that was like a little bit jarring for me in the whole film, where every time I looked at Gozer, I was just thinking, that's Olivia Wilde. And it did take me out in the moment just a little bit, I think. But great casting all the same. Even though the voice was dubbed, so you do kind of wonder whether they could have got an unknown to play Gozer. But Olivia Wilde's performance was kind of wild. Sorry. Where Gozer seemed a lot more animalistic, more vicious. Poor Evo. We never even knew him. and she seemed a lot more of a dangerous character this time round. And just as it looks as if all hope is lost, we hear, "Hey, flat top!" And it cuts to the guys. And there's a moment that's kept in the film where there's all three of them standing there with their proton packs and the jumpsuits. And the film even takes a beat and Bill Murray's Venkman is smiling. And it's almost like how they do in sitcoms where somebody delivers a joke and the live studio audience is going to react. So there's this beat where they know us in the cinema screens, applauding or cheering before it kicks in again. Before we get to that point, actually, I should point out, we obviously met Ray beforehand, earlier in the film, with Phoebe's phone call, where we get an update as to what happened to the Ghostbusters. And that was a heartbreaking phone call. Last time we saw those guys, they were triumphant having defeated Vigo. The crowds were cheering again, they're standing on the steps, they're getting the key to the city. And then Ray Stantz delivers the line, "Egon Spengler can rot in hell." It was shocking. And then obviously gives the backstory as to what happened to them all over the years. Venkman, a professor of promotion and marketing, if I remember correctly. Winston got into finance, has done very well for himself. And as we see by the end of the film, has been keeping Ray's shop afloat. And then obviously we get the backstory of Egon and what he went off to do. And the relationship. And essentially taking all the Ghostbusters equipment, running away with it, putting them out of business. And it was just shocking and really sad to hear all that stuff. But then dramatically builds all that more perfectly when we get to that end scene. And there's that reconciliation. Always had a sense that they were going to go with this and have Egon return in spirit form. I know a couple of years ago at the Ghostbusters Fan Fest, Jason Reitman was talking about that they were going through all the old shot footage from the original Ghostbusters, citing reasons for doing it. And then you start to join the dots and wonder whether they could pull it off or not. Our three original boys in grey have had their streams uncrossed and thrown across the floor. And Phoebe is taking her shot and is in a locked battle with Gozer. And then you see that ghostly hand hold on to the gun as well. And that's where, if you're a Ghostbusters fan, you begin to crack. It was quite amazing what they did, how they did it. Just seeing that fully realised, older Egon Spengler. I know they shot the film with the full cooperation of the Ramis family. But you have to wonder how emotional that must have been for them to watch this film and see that happen and see this portrayal of their dad on screen. I have to assume it's some sort of deep fake technology that they've used based on the old footage and that they've aged it up accordingly. The eyes and the nose were pretty much perfect, and it felt like you were looking at him. Obviously, we've all seen interview footage with Harold Ramis in his later years, and he doesn't look like the Egon Spengler that we have on screen here, but he looks like Harold Ramis playing Egon. And it was just beautifully done. And you have that shot of all four of them all lined up together. Ray, Peter, Winston, and then the ghost Egon. And Winston looking and nudging Peter, and Peter double taking. And then Ray was the one, after that earlier phone call, where it showed how those best friends had broken apart. To see Ray look at his old friend and the scene where he's telling him he's sorry that he didn't believe him. Just completely crippling. Just a beautiful, beautiful. And that was the moment where I just completely went. Just tearful Ray. Dan Aykroyd was so good. You forget how good he is. You see him in interviews and he comes across as very, very Dan Aykroyd. And has his sales patter and is very professional when it comes to the whole sales pitch of the movies and the ideas and talking to the press about this, that and the other. And then you forget about how good he can actually really be. And then just that, like I said, that moment where he says sorry, man, that got me. That completely got me. Ernie Hudson was great. He was on a level playing field with the other two guys this time. There's always been that kind of weird thought where he's been a bit sidelined against the main three. I mean, obviously I know there's not a main three anymore, but he was equal footing with Venkman and Stantz and got given just as many lines, just as many jokes. Glad they got to address the "Are you a god?" bit again. Was waiting to see how that was going to pan out. Yeah, I'm a god too. We're all gods. And then we get that ending with Callie reconciling with her dad and just hugging that spirit of Egon as his work is done and he disappears off into the ether. I think I said before how the film was very Spielbergian. That played right up to it. And that's not a negative. It was a beautiful moment. It was kind of up there. It was very much like the end of E.T. And then we pan up into the sky and we get the For Harold dedication. And that's what the film was all about. A love letter. A love letter to us as fans. A love letter to Harold. And just this so moving journey of this family. Finding out who they are. And accepting who they are. Spanglers. Then we cut to New York. We see the Ecto going across the bridge. And that familiar tune kicks in. And we hit the credits. And then we're like, hey, I thought Sigourney Weaver was in this. And then her name comes up on the credits. But I didn't see her. And it's bang. First mid-credit scene. Dana and Peter doing the old ESP experiment. Nice little throwaway scene. Nice gag. Great to see them both back together. I was looking on the wall to see if there's any pictures of a grown-up Oscar, but there's nothing there. And then right at the end of the credits, we get that old deleted scene between Janine and Egon. Cleaned up remarkably well against the footage that I'd seen previously. Then we get that scene with Janine catching up with Winston in his huge office with all his staff, talking about what success he'd been. Winston reiterating that he had the tools and the talent. And Ray was the heart, Egon the brains. Peter wasn't the mouth. I can't remember what he said about Peter. But it was something along those lines. And Winston was the sex appeal. And I think the line was, I may be a businessman, but I will always be a Ghostbuster. And he talks about how being a Ghostbuster taught him to be strong and never be afraid of anything. Take those chances. And I think that was a real message, again, out there to those fans. All those Ghostbusters societies all over the world, in every city, all dressing up, kitted out in the jumpsuits and the proton packs, and all the good charity work that they do. I know he said before, and people on the outside may sort of say, that it's only a film, but that speech from Winston really imbued what it means to wear that uniform, and the honour and the pride that those guys wearing it take in what they do. And again, I think that's a message from Jason Reitman to everyone out there that supported the franchise for all these years. It just felt like a really class note to end on. Then we have that closed-in shot where Winston looks like he's bought the firehouse. And it's not a Starbucks, which is good. And the XO1 drives in and he talks about how he did it all for his children. And then we pan downstairs to the containment unit and there's that red light and the pulsating sound before we bang out into black. What does that mean? Is that going to be a lead-in for a future sequel? God, I hope so. Right, I think I've rambled on probably too long enough now. Hopefully this comes good in the edit. I'll find out by the viewing figures, I suppose. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed Afterlife as much as I did. If you have enjoyed it, go and enjoy it again. And go and enjoy it again. I've got one more showing booked for Monday, so I would have seen it 5 times by Monday lunchtime. And then I think I'm going to give myself a few days break. But just a beautiful film. I'll keep saying that over and over again, but there's nothing more I can really... Just a fantastic job. Just incredible work by everyone involved. If you did make it to the end of all these ramblings, please, if you don't mind, click that like button. If you want to subscribe to the channel, you can press that button as well and hit the notification bell if you want to see any more of my content when it comes up. I think I'm going to have a rest now. But suffice to say, Ghostbusters Afterlife exceeded my expectations, and my expectations were through the roof. I'm just absolutely in love with this movie. It just feels so perfect to me right now. And even though I'm going to, I can't wait until Monday until I see it again. Okay, I'm going to leave you to go and book more tickets now. Let's give it the opening weekend it deserves. Take care. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.